Hi everyone. Today we're going to learn about QA and QC, what these mean, and understand how they're involved in commercial printing. So, what is quality assurance or QA? Well, at all stages from designer to user, checks are going to be made to ensure that everything is of consistently high quality. This is about focusing on defect prevention, stopping problems before they occur, making sure that people are doing their jobs right, that the product is being produced the right way. So these are procedures to affect all functions that affect quality. So these are going to be measured against the specification primarily. So they're going to be things like materials, equipment, production processes, during the manufacturing process, as well as things like staff training to make sure that people know how to do their jobs the right way of a consistently high quality, and customer views. So you might check things periodically and see what the feedback is. So in this video, which you only have to watch for 1.5 minutes, this is a quality assurance associate, and this lady describes the kind of jobs that she does on a daily basis, and it's a really interesting insight into quality assurance. So give that one a watch. So therefore, what is QC? Well, that is quality control. That's the one we tend to talk about on a fairly regular basis. So during manufacture specifically, samples are removed and they're checked to make sure that everything is being made within specific tolerances to the standard that is expected. So this is about focusing on defect identification throughout the process. These are checks against the manufacturing specification. So in quality assurance, we want to make sure that things are put in place to make sure there aren't going to be any problems, but problems do occur. Human error can be an issue, or perhaps a piece of machinery isn't functioning the way that it should be. Well, to make sure that actually the products are still good quality, that's why we do quality control. So, examples. Components involved might be tested for accuracy of dimensions to make sure they're the right size. They might be the right weight. Things like flammability or malleability or weather resistance, whatever the function, the property of the product is supposed to have. Things like fit and use, making sure that little components actually match together the way that they should. And in this video are a couple of really excellent examples of quality control. By all means, watch the whole thing if you fancy. But the two examples are specifically at 1:48 and 3:23. So you can see the samples being removed from this batch, which these are hypodermic needles, and you can see the kind of processes that they have to go through. So there's a nice example. Okay, so when the samples are being removed to actually make sure that everything is within tolerance, often what will actually be applied is a go, no-go gauge. Okay, so a go, no-go gauge is a tool that checks if the part was in with tolerance. There are lots of different types depending on the part. Obviously, not every go, no-go gauge has this conventional sort of T or I bar shape. For this pipe, it's about the diameter. For this chain, it's about making sure it's the right length. This go no-go gauge is for some kind of head for a screw, perhaps something like that. So there's lots of different types. But where each the case, you can see where it says go and no-go, go and no-go, which means that the parts are always going to be within tolerance. So again, that's just removed during quality control to check a batch. And talking a little bit more about tolerances, this is another fantastic video. Again, only watch it to 1.5 minutes. It's quite a long video, don't watch the rest. And it really explains to you the different kinds of tolerances that are checked for in samples. Okay, so And so now we've learned a little bit about tolerances. Well, what does that mean? It's the acceptable range of variation or difference from a precise standard which can be tolerated or allowed. So I have a couple of examples, so let's do a little bit of maths. Now an engineer specifies a component must be 500 millimeters plus or minus 2 millimeters. So what are the minimum and maximum dimensions? Okay, here we go. So if we want the minimum dimension for, if it's 500, then we want to do 500 minus 2, and that's going to give us 498, of course. And if it's plus, it's going to be 500 plus 2, which gives us 502. So our answer, what are the minimum maximum dimensions, is 498 to 502 millimeters, making sure that we have the units. If you don't include the units, guys, you won't get the marks. Okay, there's the answer. That one's nice and easy. Let's have a go at a second one. So a chocolate bar weighs 250 grams plus or minus 1%. What are the min and max weights? Well, I'd love for you to pause this, have a little go, and then we'll go through the answer in a second. Okay, so let's go through the answers. So if a chocolate bar, we want 1% of 250 grams. Now, you can work that out straight away, but for those people that might struggle a little bit, let's do 10% because that's nice and easy. Well, if we have 250.0, there we go, because that's visible, isn't it? There's our point, so we're going to take it back 1, aren't we? So that makes it 25 grams. So 25 grams is 10%. So if we did it again, because we want 1%, then we go back another one. That makes it 2.5 grams. Okay, so this is 1%. So therefore, we want to have the minimum and maximum weights. So 250 minus 2.5. Now you must make sure that you have your decimal point in the right position. So let's do a little bit of maths. Well, can't do that. Let's go back here. So that becomes 4. That's 10. That makes it 9, down to 1. So we've got 5. 9 minus 2 is 7. 4 and 2. 247.5 grams is going to be the low range, the minimum range. Let's do the top. 250 plus 2.5. So that's going to be 5, 2, 5 and 2 grams. So our minimum and max is like so, 247.5 to 252.5. There we go. Hopefully that was successful for you. Okay, so we need to talk about commercial printing. Okay, that's what we're doing at the moment. We're looking at paper, cardboard and commercial printing. And a lot of commercial printing involves tolerances, very, very specific tolerances, in fact. So printers and consumers are always trying to achieve the best possible print quality. One form of quality control that happens commercially are using these special marks at the edges of pages. So, and they look a little bit like this. There's a common different variety. They all mean the same thing, but they're just slightly different pictures for the same thing. They are called registration marks. There are also colour bars that you find on the side. So you may have seen them on some packaging before. They look like that. And we also have crop marks. You won't have seen those because, surprisingly enough, they get cropped off before the product comes to you. So, remembering previously that we've learned about commercial printing, that in litho printing or offset lithography, the printers use 4 colours CMYK, cyan, yellow, magenta and black, and each has its own unique printing plate. Well, how do we know that these are going to line up? Well, we have to make sure they align or register. That's why it's called a registration mark. Otherwise, they're going to look really fuzzy. And down here you can actually see when there's this little overlap, that suggests that they're not registering. That's why sometimes the coloured ones are used instead. So the registration mark is added to each plate in the exact same position so the printer can check the alignment. Sometimes the colours are included, but they're usually black, as I explained. So usually they look like this, and occasionally they look like this. Okay, so gone through registration mark. Let's go through a couple of others. Well, colour bars. Not only do the plates have to register, but the colours have to be perfect. Of course they do. A colour bar is added to the side to show different tints, and they're labelled in percentages. They look like this. So C, M, Y, K, cyan, magenta, yellow and black. And you may well have seen some of them on some packaging like this. They often hide them somewhere, sometimes on the bottom, sometimes in the fold, because they don't want you to necessarily see them, but sometimes they're kind of more obvious like that. And a densiometer, as in the density of something. A densiometer is used to check the density. And it literally looks like this. Sometimes they're very high tech, and you scan it over a particular colour and it tells you all the colour charts. It's quite amazing, actually. So crop marks, you will find them up in the corners of products before they are cut and sent out. So they're located in the corners, and they show exactly where the outline of the finished image should be and guide the printer to where to cut or guillotine. The printed area is slightly larger than necessary to allow for a tolerance of error, and there's usually about 3 millimeters, which is quite large, and this is called the bleed area. So this little border here around the edges here, this is called the bleed area, and it's called bleed area because there is you do get a certain amount of bleeding of the ink inside the paper. The fibres draw it out. It doesn't always stay perfectly centre, so they need to allow for a little bit of error, a little bit of leeway there. Here's a fantastic quick video which shows about colour consistency and quality control, and you can see this chappie here using a densiometer. So I would like you to pause the video and see if you can recognise some of the for quality control. So pause it here, have a little think, and then we'll come back. Okay, so hopefully you recognise some of these, and maybe there's a couple that you didn't recognise. Well, here we have our registration mark, here we have our crop marks, and here we have our colour bar. And we've got a couple of others as well. So A is called a star target. There's our registration marks. This is page information. There we go. So it's got printing times and whatever else might be needed. We also have the tint bar down at the bottom. So not only do we have colours, but we have the tones as well. And trim marks or crop marks, same name. So well done. I hope that was very useful, and I'll see you in class. Bye.